That pan has been sitting on the back of your stovetop for a while now, hasn't it? Not broken, not ruined, just ugly. Dark around the edges, tacky in the center, carrying every roast and every batch of vegetables you have put through it for the past few years. You have scrubbed it. You have soaked it. You may have even thought about throwing it out and starting fresh, and yet the pan itself is perfectly fine underneath all of that. What is coating it is not dirt, not grease in the ordinary sense. It is polymerized oil, fat that has been heated past a certain point so many times that it has chemically bonded to the metal and hardened into something close to a lacquer. Dish soap does not touch it. Hot water softens it briefly, and then it cools and hardens right back. The pan looks ruined because ordinary cleaning logic does not account for what that crust actually is. What gets it off costs about $1. You likely already have it in your cabinet right now. The women who raised me on a Blue Ridge Mountain homestead kept their pans working through decades of wood stove cooking, canning seasons, and hard winters. Nothing got replaced before its time. And a pan's time was a long way off if you knew what to do with it. That kind of knowing is what I grew up around, and it is what I want to pass along here. Drop your location in the comments. I read everyone that comes in, and I am always glad to know where folks are writing from. I'd love to hear from you. The subscribe button is right there if you want to keep getting this kind of help. The reason scrubbing fails is not effort. People scrub hard, and the dark coating stays put, and they blame themselves or they blame the pan. The real reason is chemistry. Polymerized oil is not water-soluble. Dish soap works on fat that is still in a liquid or semi-liquid state. It surrounds the fat molecules and lifts them away with water efficiently. Polymerized oil has cross-linked at the molecular level. It has become a different substance entirely. Soap slides right over the top of it. What breaks it loose is something that gets underneath the crust rather than sitting on top of it. Baking soda combined with white vinegar and a small amount of dish soap does exactly that. The vinegar loosens the carbon-heavy top layer. The baking soda provides mild abrasion and reacts with what the vinegar exposes. The soap carries what loosens away from the surface. 3 things, $1 and the pan comes back. Spread a generous layer of dry baking soda across the entire surface, enough to cover it completely before the next step. Pour just enough white vinegar over the top to wet the soda and start the reaction. You will see it fizz, which is exactly right. Add 3 or 4 drops of dish soap and work the paste into a uniform layer with a damp cloth. Do not rinse it. Let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes. The reaction needs time to work underneath that polymerized layer, and patience here is the whole of the method. When the time is up, take a non-scratch scrubbing pad, not steel wool, which will score the surface and leave the pan worse than you found it, and work in small circular motions. You will feel the resistance release. The dark coating will begin to come away in patches. Rinse with warm water, assess what remains, and repeat where needed. Most pans come fully clean in 2 rounds. The other surfaces in a kitchen that respond to the same baking soda logic, the mixtures for cast iron versus aluminum, and the vinegar ratios for heavier buildup are all written out in my handbook of old Appalachian home methods, cleaning chapter, with the amounts beside each. There's a good deal else in there for every room of the house. Scan the code on your screen or follow the link in the description. Both go to the same place. That is the one time I will mention it. The baking soda paste handles most sheet pans, the familiar brown to black buildup from regular cooking. What it cannot do on its own is lift the very darkest, oldest carbon, the kind that has been baked on through years of high heat and barely moves after the first round. For that, there is one more step. Hydrogen peroxide is what finishes the job on a pan that baking soda alone could not fully clear. Not the industrial kind. The plain brown bottle from the drugstore, 3% concentration, the one that costs under $2 and has been sitting in medicine cabinets across this country for generations. That is what you need, and nothing stronger. Pour enough hydrogen peroxide into the pan to cover the darkest areas. You are not filling it, just wetting the surface fully. Sprinkle another layer of baking soda over the top of it. The two together create a mild oxidizing reaction that targets carbon deposits specifically, breaking the bond between the burnt layer and the metal beneath it in a way that vinegar paste alone cannot reach. Let it sit for at least 30 minutes. On a pan with years of buildup, an hour is better. Then come back with your non-scratch pad and work it the same way. Small circles, steady pressure, no forcing. What comes off will surprise you. The carbon lifts in sheets on a pan that seemed permanently stained an hour ago. Rinse it clean and hold it up to the light. The metal underneath is lighter than you remembered it being. Now, I want to be straight with you about what this method will and will not do, because that matters more to me than having you walk away thinking I promised something I did not. This combination, the baking soda paste followed by the hydrogen peroxide boost, will clear polymerized grease and carbon buildup from a structurally sound pan. What it will not do is restore a pan that has warped from repeated high heat. A warped pan rocks on the oven rack and cooks unevenly, and no cleaning method on earth changes that. Pitting is physical damage, not a coating. Once the surface of the metal itself has broken down, the pan has reached the end of its useful life, and it is honest to say so. The difference between a pan that looks damaged and a pan that is damaged is worth knowing before you put the work in. Run your finger across the darkest area before you start. If the surface feels rough and cratered underneath the buildup, the metal itself may be compromised. If it feels smooth, if the darkness is a coating sitting on top of an intact surface, the pan is worth saving, and these methods will save it. Polymerization is the word for what happened to that grease, and the reason it matters is this. When cooking oil is heated above its smoke point repeatedly, the fat molecules begin to link together into long chains. Those chains bond to whatever surface they are sitting on, in this case, your sheet pan, and they cure into a hard, dark layer that behaves more like a finish than a food residue. The same principle is what makes a well-seasoned cast iron skillet nearly non-stick. On a cast iron pan, that layer is intentional and welcome. On a sheet pan, it accumulates unevenly and picks up carbon from burnt food particles along the way, which is what gives it that rough, discolored look. You do not need to remember any of those words. What you need to remember is that the crust on your pan is a cured substance, not a dirty one, and it responds to chemistry rather than to scrubbing force. That is the principle the whole method rests on, and knowing it means you will never waste an hour of hard scrubbing on a pan again. The pan is clean now, or very close to it. What happens next determines whether it stays that way. The habit that keeps a sheet pan clean after this is simpler than the cleaning itself, and it takes about 10 minutes a week if you do it right. While the pan is still warm from the oven, not hot enough to burn you, but warm enough that the surface has not fully cooled, wipe it down with a dry cloth or a paper towel. Fat that is not yet polymerized comes away easily at this stage. It has not bonded to the metal yet. It is still just grease, and a warm surface releases it without any product at all. That one habit, done consistently after every use, is what stops the buildup from starting again. The women in our hollow did not let a pan cool down dirty. That was simply not how it was done. If a pan has been through a particularly heavy roast, something with a marinade or a cut of meat with a lot of rendered fat, give it a short soak while it is still warm. Fill it with hot water and a few drops of dish soap and leave it for 10 minutes before you wipe it down. Not an hour, not overnight. 10 minutes while the surface is still open from the heat. Soaking a cold pan for hours achieves almost nothing on polymerized buildup, and it can start to work against you on certain metals by encouraging surface oxidation. Warm and quick is the principle. How you store the pans matters too, and it is something people overlook entirely. Stacking sheet pans directly on top of one another, the way they come out of the cabinet in most kitchens, means the bottom of one pan is dragging across the surface of the one below it every time you pull one out. Over years, that stacking friction scores the surface in fine scratches that give polymerized oil more texture to grip onto. Lay a folded dish towel or a piece of cloth between each pan when you stack them. It takes a moment and it extends the life of the surface considerably. Now, the spray bottles and the specialized pan cleaning kits have been on the market for years and they are not cheap. A single can of oven and pan degreaser runs $4 to $8 and needs replacing regularly. The pan restoration sets that get advertised heavily run $15 to $30 or more, and what is inside them, when you read the ingredient list, is a combination of alkaline salts, a mild acid, and a surfactant, which is to say baking soda, vinegar, and soap. Packaged, labeled, and marked up considerably for the convenience of not having to know that. There is no profit in the old way. That is exactly why nobody sells it to you. The cleaning product industry depends on the idea that a dirty pan is a specialized problem requiring a specialized solution. It is not. It is a chemistry problem requiring a substance that breaks a specific molecular bond, and that substance costs $1 and sits in your kitchen cabinet already. Every time you reach for the expensive spray instead, you are paying for the label and the marketing and the assumption that you do not know what your grandmother knew. My mother kept the same 2 baking pans working on that mountain homestead for the better part of 40 years. They were dark from use. Any pan that has cooked real food long enough will carry some color, but they were clean and they were sound, and they did their work right up until she decided she was done with them. She did not buy a single specialized cleaning product in all that time. She kept a box of baking soda under the sink and a jug of white vinegar in the pantry, and that was the whole of her cleaning cabinet for metal surfaces. She would have found the spray bottles baffling, not foolish, just unnecessary, in the way that buying something is always unnecessary when you already have what does the job. A kept pan is a small thing, but a kitchen full of kept thing on surfaces that work, tools that last, nothing replaced before its time. That is a different way of living entirely, and it is one that costs a great deal less than the alternative. Here is what you need to walk away with, plain and simple. Baking soda, white distilled vinegar, and a few drops of dish soap. That is the paste. Cover the pan, wet it with vinegar until it fizzes, add the soap, and let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes. Non-scratch pad, small circles, steady patience. Rinse and repeat where needed. For the darkest, oldest carbon that the paste does not fully lift, pour 3% hydrogen peroxide over the surface, dust another layer of baking soda on top, and give it 30 minutes to an hour before you scrub. Rinse it clean and hold it to the light. That pan has years left in it. After that, keep it warm when you wipe it. 10 minutes of soaking while the surface is still open from the heat does more than an hour of soaking once it has gone cold. Put a folded cloth between your pans when you stack them. Those 2 habits together mean you likely will not need to do the deep clean again for a very long time. The total cost of everything in this method lands right around $1 if you are starting from scratch. If your cabinet already has baking soda and vinegar in it, and it probably does, the cost is nothing at all. Have you got a pan at home that you had written off entirely? One that has been sitting in the back of the cabinet because you assumed it was too far gone to bother with? Drop it in the comments and tell me how long you have had it. I read every comment that comes in, and I would genuinely like to know. Keeping a kitchen the old way, knowing what things are made of, knowing what fixes them, never replacing something before you have tried to bring it back, is the kind of knowledge that used to pass naturally from one generation to the next across kitchen tables and back porches and root cellars. It stopped being passed down not because it stopped working, but because there stopped being profit in it. Subscribe if you want to keep getting it. There's a good deal more where this came from, and none of it will cost you much. The natural next question, after a pan like this comes clean, is what else in a kitchen people have quietly given up on. The cast iron that rusted in the back of a drawer. The baking dish gone gray with mineral deposits. The stovetop grates that no amount of dish soap has ever fully cleared. Those have answers too, and they follow the same logic. Cheap materials, the right chemistry, and the patience to let it work. That is where we are headed. A kitchen that keeps its tools is a kitchen that keeps its dignity. My grandmother understood that in the way you understand something you have lived by for 60 years, not as a philosophy, but as a plain daily fact. She did not throw things away because they looked worn. She threw them away when they were genuinely finished, and that day came much later than most people would have expected, because she knew the difference between worn and broken. That is the difference worth knowing. Take care of what you have. Bring back what still has use left in it, and your kitchen will serve you longer and cost you less than any store ever promised it would.